Hi, I'm Gary Mickelson. I'm the stage manager on Come From Away. I guess I should say on the Broadway company of Come From Away because they are now a Canadian company, a national tour, and Dublin is actually starting previews tonight, the day that I'm interviewing. You're interviewing me. Dublin starts previews tonight. So I'm the Broadway guy.
And so it will be in London and Australia as well.
Yeah, the Dublin production will go to London, and then Australia is going to do their production, and so it's crazy. Originally, David and Irene said that their highest aspiration for the show is that it would be performed in every high school in Canada. They never, for a million years, thought it would be a Broadway company, a Canadian company, a national tour, London, Australia. They never thought. They just wanted it to be done in high schools just to tell this wonderful story.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
And there's going to be a movie soon, so it's going to be even more.
Yeah, there is. So it's nuts.
Anyways, how did you become a stage manager?
On Come From Away or
in
just
general?
In general. When I was in college, I went to the University of Missouri. It's not a real big theater school, but I was kind of bumming around and changing majors repeatedly. And I had a professor who had directed me in a show. I was an actor in his show, and he thought I would be a good assistant director for him. So he said, hey, come be my assistant. It was the Glass Menagerie, and be my assistant on the Glass Menagerie. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then, but what he didn't say was the assistant director was also the stage manager. And so I was like, okay, so it's a two-part job, and I really had no idea how to do it. I was just making it up as I went along, and then so I was like, oh wow, I guess I'm able to do this. I can schedule rehearsals and texts, and I can call a show. It's the first time I had called a show ever, and I didn't even really at the time really pay attention to how other stage managers were doing it, because I didn't even just see it. I was like, oh, I'm acting in this show, and that was all I was doing. And then I moved to Chicago, and I did a lot of things for different companies. I had an internship at a place called the Theater Building that allowed people to stage manage shows, direct shows, be in shows, run crew on shows. So I did all these things, and then I went to LA, and I was an assistant to a producer for a little while. But I really wanted to be in New York, or at least a big theater town, because LA was not really a big theater town. And so I moved to New York, and when I first moved here in '94, I was still doing a little bit of everything, and then the phone just kind of kept ringing to be a stage manager, and about 10 years later I was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing with my life, and I was like, it's a good thing I enjoy what I do, and now I'm on Come From Away. I think it's my 14th Broadway show, and so that's how I got here.
Tell me a bit about your first Broadway show. What it felt like to work on Broadway?
My first Broadway show, it was interesting. I thought that it was going to be just so like everything would change, because now I'm on Broadway, and I got there and there was a show called Victor Victoria, and it was towards the end of the run. I did about the last 6 months or so of Julie Andrews, and then Raquel Welch came in to join the show. So there was no like big first day of rehearsal. There was no big opening night. There was no like really big event thing, because I joined the company. It was already up and running, and they were like, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. I'm so and so. I'm your carpenter. I'm so and so. I'm the other stage manager. I'm so and so." So I was like, "Oh, great." And then I just did it, and then I went home, and so it was like no really big thing, and then. But soon after that closed, I went and did Triumph of Love. And in a lot of ways, even though that was a big flop, that felt like my first Broadway show, even though it was my second, because there was the big press event of a first day of rehearsal. And you're going through, and we had cast changes, which was a little exciting, and we had we did a press event where we showed bits of the show. And then we were teching it, and we were figuring out all the problems with it. Then there was the big opening night, and I didn't really expect it to be a big thing on opening night, because it wasn't a big thing on Victor Victoria. And I got to my office, and it was at the Royale Theater, just 2 doors down actually, and I got to the theater, and there was so many gifts on my desk, and I was like, this is crazy, and I ran out and I bought a little disposable camera, because it was before everyone had a camera phone. I bought a little disposable camera and just like started taking pictures of everything and everyone and everywhere, because I was like, this is amazing. So that really felt like my first Broadway show, even though it was my second. So
I guess like an actor, you change jobs often.
I'm sorry?
I guess like actors, you never know how long the job will last.
No, you never do. There are basically, when people say, so how long are you going to be doing Come From Away? And I say, well, as long as people keep coming to see the show. It's an open-ended run. Sometimes you do shows that are a limited engagement that's set. You know, it's like, some Broadway shows are limited engagements. They'll go, well, we're on Broadway for 10 weeks only, or whatever it is. Some Broadway shows flop. I was on a show that closed after 23 performances, which was really heartbreaking, because there was so much. You did so much work that you put into it, and then it closed. I've done a lot of regional theater. I've worked at Paper Mill Playhouse, and those shows only run for 4 weeks. And there's a big off-Broadway company, Second Stage, and those shows only run for a couple of months. And then it's just all set. You know you're going to be in this show until this date, and then it's done. And then you just start looking for the next gig. Being on this show is great. You look out and you see the show is packed. It's standing room only every night. And you go, oh, okay, well maybe we'll be here for a little bit. But you can never take anything for granted. I've been surprised. I was on Memphis for 3 years, and the day that we got our closing notice, I was really shocked. I thought it was gonna run at least another year, and all of a sudden they said, no, we're gonna close in August, and I was like, what? So, but what are you gonna do?
So how do you deal with this lack of stability?
It's funny. It just seems so normal to me. My parents, when I was growing up, my parents really hammered home to me the save your money, save your money, save your money. So when I'm working, I try and save as much money as I can. And then, so when I'm not working, it's okay. And if you're smart with your money, you can survive a couple of unemployment bouts. I've been extremely lucky that I haven't been unemployed that long, but there are a lot of times that relatives will ask me on the holidays. They'll say, gosh, I don't think I could handle being such in an industry where you just don't know if you're going to have a job next week. And I said, really, you don't know if you're going to have a job next week. I know you work at Enron, but Enron could suddenly, your boss could be a huge shyster and bilk millions out of the company, and then your company is closed. There's plants close all the time, and it's sad, but there's really no stability in any job. I'm sure anyone that was ever been laid off thought they were going to be working for a long time, and it's really sad. At least with my job, I know it's like the show could close at any point. They only have to give you 1 week notice. So
1 week?
Yeah, that's all they have to give you. So you could come in. We could go. Technically, I mean, it's not going to happen because we're still selling out. But you could show up on a Tuesday, and there could be a notice on the board saying show's closing on Sunday, and that's all the notice that they have to give you. Our producers are very, very nice. They were the same producers that were on Memphis, and they gave us like 3 months of a notice, and so we had time to process. On the same producers that were on First Date, I think they gave us like 4 or 5 months on First Date, and so we had that time to process. We had that time to look for another job. We had that time to say, look, I'm going to be unemployed at the end of the year, so if you have anything beyond that, I'll be looking and stuff. So Yeah, so, but they only have to give 1 week. And I've been on shows where you go, oh, we're closing on Sunday. I've also been on shows where they put the closing notice up and then on Tuesday, but then they take it down on Friday. And then you go, okay, we're going to be here for at least another week. And then you came in on Tuesday and it was back up again. A certain show I did, which I'm not going to say what show it was, but we had 3 closing notices. Every Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays in a row, we're closing on Sunday. No, we're not. We're closing on Sunday. Oh, we're not. We're closing on Sunday. And then we finally did actually close on that Sunday. That's a little difficult to take because you never know. So.
Wow, that must be tough.
Yeah, that's life upon the wicked stage.
So what are the most challenging aspects of your job besides that?
It's on this show, there are challenges, but they're all joyous challenges because at the end of the day, we tell this story to a sold-out house of people that are so appreciative, and they're out there, they're laughing, and they're crying, and they're applauding, and they're cheering. Literally every night there's at least a handful of people that are Newfoundlanders. Either they came down to see the show, or they're transplants and they live here now and they were born in Newfoundland. They're waving their flags and everything. So even the worst day had come from away, which there really hasn't been anything really bad because it's been such a joy. At the end of the day, you see all these people who love the show, and you walk out that stage door and they're all there and they're all so happy, and you see these are places that, this is actually the 3rd map that we've had, and you can see how full it is already, of just where people came from to see the show. And on the opposite wall, we have a post-it notes that just people saying, I love this show, I'm from Newfoundland, or I'm going to visit Newfoundland now because of this show, etc., etc. Thank you for telling this story, and that just makes everything worthwhile. We just finished collecting for Broadway Cares, and there was a little girl who came. I was out front, I had a bucket, and I was taking donations for Broadway Cares, and this little girl came up to me and she said, can I give a candy? And I thought, I was like, did I hear her correctly? So I said, I'm sorry, sweetheart, what did you say? And she said, well, can I give a candy? And I looked up at her mother, and her mother said, it's all she has. She mouthed it to me, it's all she has. So I was like, well, of course you can give a candy. And it was just so heartwarming, because a lot of times parents will give their kid $1 or $20 or whatever and say, hey, put it in, but it's not from them. And this little girl didn't want to do that. She wanted to give something of herself, and all she had was this little individually wrapped candy, and that's what she gave. And so I said, well, of course you can. And that night, luckily, there happened to be some Newfoundlanders in the house, and they came up to me and they gave me a handful of Newfoundland pins. And I told her, I said, well, when you give a candy, you get a pin. So I gave her this pin, and it's just this tiny little pin, and her face just lit up. It was so bright, and it was just the sweetest thing in the world. And I went home and I told my wife, and she started crying. No, actually, because I mentioned it in the show report, and I just showed the show report to her when she got home, and she started crying, and she got a little tears welled up in her eyes. And it's just things like that when it happened, and that has never happened to me before. I've been on shows that I've loved before, but I haven't been on shows where that effect has been on the people that come and see the show. People make us quilts, and they send them, and they don't say, hey, would you like to buy this or anything? They send it. We have quilts hanging backstage of people that made things. We have paintings. People have painted things. People have drawn things, and we get letters. I got a letter from a kid in Kentucky, and he said, I'm not the cool kid. I don't play sports. I love theater, and I saw your show. I found your show on YouTube, and I was just watching videos of this and that. I saw you on the Tonys, and I just love your show so much. And it spoke so much to him. And a lot of times people will write us a letter and say, oh, may I have a signed playbill or something. This kid didn't ask for anything. He just wanted to write us and tell us how much he loved the show. And he had been following some of the actors on Instagram and whatnot. And there's a thing called the Gum House that's backstage, and just gum in there. So if you want a quick piece of gum, you get it. Well, he gave us gum for the gum house because he found out through someone on Instagram, oh, there's a gum house that come from Hawaii. He sent gum. There's a line in the show that the kettle's on, the candle's in the window and the kettle's always on. And he drew a candle and cut it out and put and then drew a kettle and cut it out and then sent that with it. And the kettle, he wrote, the kettle's always on, candle's in the window. And then we put that up in our office. And then, and I sent him, even though he didn't ask for anything, I sent him a playbill and a flag and a pin. And then he wrote me back and said, my parents are coming, for my junior high graduation, or my middle school graduation, my parents are bringing me to New York and we're going to come see your show. Can I meet you? It's like, absolutely. So he comes with his family, and his letter was so well written that I had laminated it and I put it up so everyone can see it. And he was stunned when he saw his letter there. And then we went outside and you know, in our little tiny office window, I said, look, there's your kettle, there's your candle. And he was just so happy, and he met the cast, and the cast is so great in meeting people. They're so giving, and it's a total joy. I think I can't say enough about how joyous it is to work on this show.
And what exactly do you do? Like Arthur mentions that you handle all the communications and... Yeah,
it's a lot like herding cats. Do you want like a general thing? Or you want me to like just talk about like what my day is when I arrive? What are you looking for?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay. Well, okay, so I arrived to the theater. Well, actually I have one right here. I do what's called an in-out. And it lists if anyone is out that particular day. And this day right now, it's the middle of cold and flu season, so I have an actor out with laryngitis, and the person who normally goes on for her, she's dealing with vocal issues, so we have another person going on for her. So usually that's the first thing I do when I get to the theater, but usually the day starts in the morning when I'll get a text from someone saying, I'm not feeling very well, and then you start telling people, you're going to be on tonight as this character, you're going to be on tonight as that character. And then you get to the theater, I do the in-out, I distribute that to all the people on our crew that need to know. Hair, wardrobe, lighting, sound, etc., etc. And then I'll put the stuffers out. Those are little sheets of paper that you put in the program, so the ushers can, when they hand out the programs, the correct casting is in there. Put the front of house board out, and that's so when people come into the theater, they know who's on, who's out. And then cast starts to arrive. Sometimes you have to rehearse a quick thing if it's a new person going on for the first time, or if something didn't go well the night before, you rehearse one or two quick things. 30 minutes before the show, you start to you check, make sure everyone is here. That's when the actors have to be there at half hour. And sometimes an actor's stuck on a train. We had just last week, we had an actor, there was an incident on one of the subways, an actor was stuck, she was on her way to work. She left in plenty of time, but she couldn't make it, so her understudy went on, and her understudy went to the theater that day not knowing she was on. She found out at about 6:15 that she may go on that night because the other person was stuck on a train, and then about 6:40 or so, she was still deep into Queens, and she's like, this train's not moving, I'm not going to make it. So we're like, okay, and then wardrobe has to hurry up and change and get everything ready to go, because you got to get person A's costumes out and get person B's costumes on. If that person wore a wig has to know. Everyone has a microphone, so sound has to know, etc., etc. And then you do the show, and then at the end of every show, I do what's called a performance report, and I write about what happened that night in the show. Sometimes I can whip them out in 5 minutes. Other times I'll be sitting there and like, what am I going to say about tonight? Everything went fine. What do I say about tonight? And sometimes they're a little hard to write, but I try and add a little spice to each one. And then I go home. And then and then just repeat. My phone just vibrated. I'm just going to check to make sure this is not someone calling out, and it's not. Yay. Because that happens as well. You can, right now I think I know what tonight's show is, but it could change. Typically, as a span of the week, we do that for that happens for every show. What I just said, and then typically for the week, Tuesday is a one-show day. Normally, you don't have rehearsals. Sometimes you do. Wednesdays is two-show day, so you just do the same thing twice. Thursdays, sometimes you have rehearsal, but you always have a show at night. Fridays, you almost always have rehearsal and a show at night. Saturdays, a two-show day. Sundays, just a matinee, and then you just do the same thing the next week.
So how long are your shifts usually?
I'm sorry?
How long are your shifts usually?
I never really thought of it as a shift. If it's a one-show day and there's no rehearsal, I'll be here 90 minutes before the show, and let's say like tonight's 7 o'clock show, we didn't have rehearsal, so I'll be here at 5:30, and then I'm usually, the show will come down, a little bit before 10 o'clock, and then, before 9 o'clock, and then I'll do the report, and I try and get out of here by 10 for us if it's a 7 o'clock show. Then on a two-show day, obviously when I say goodbye to my son on a Wednesday, on a two-show day, I say, okay, bye Elijah, I'm leaving, and I'll see you, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'll say, I'll see you tomorrow, even though it's morning, I'm telling my son I'll see him tomorrow. Or if you have a rehearsal and a show, that's basically the equivalent of a two-show day. So it really depends. Sometimes you're here for 5 hours, sometimes you're here for 10 or 12 hours, depending on what's happening that day.
You mentioned the show reports before. Can you give an example of the most memorable report that you have written?
The most memorable report?
Like something that stood out.
Well, it's funny because just last night we were talking about if a certain standby had ever gone on in a certain role, and I didn't remember. To my knowledge, she had never gone on, and Kaz, one of the other stage managers, she said, no, she did go on. It was like around the Tonys or something. It was in July of our first year. And so we went through, and she had a sheet, and she goes, yeah, it was in this week. I don't know exactly when, but it was in this week. So then I pulled out the folder that had the show reports, and I went through and I found it, and I was reading the show report. And on this particular day, we had 2 people out, but we didn't think we were going to have anyone out. And we had 2 people out, and then it was the first time that this one particular standby had gone on, and she just nailed. She was so great. She went on. She was fantastic. And that day we had a softball game that day. All the Broadway shows play softball in the spring and the summer. And we beat Great Comet that day, 9-6. And then I was like, I remember this day. I remember this day. And so that was kind of when it was just going back, as I write them and then hit zing and then boom and then I forget, and then all of a sudden I go back and I'll look at it. Whenever something kind of just goes a little bit wrong, I'll tend to just lightly poke fun at that, and I'll say, the only. I'll come up with some, instead of saying, oh, the only onion in our ointment happened when this happened, I'll just make up something it's so not a phrase, but I'll just make it one, and I'll say, oh, the only tribble on our Enterprise, or the only Cylon on our Battlestar, which they're all pretty nerdy references. There are a lot of comic book, a lot of sci-fi things, a lot of political things, like when Elliot Spitzer had an affair with a prostitute, I said, oh, the only hooker in our governor's mansion. Or when that one governor, when he said he was on the Appalachian Trail, but he was really with his mistress. I said, oh, the only governor on our Appalachian Trail, kind of thing. And that's just to get people to read them, because a lot of times you'll put something in the report, and you think it's going to the people that need to read it, and then they'll go, oh, I didn't know, why did this happen? And I go, well, I put it in the report. And they go, oh, I don't read the report. It's just my way of getting people to read the report. So if anything goes wrong, they'll go, ooh, I wonder what Gary's going to say about this. And Stephen Sondheim actually wrote me a letter, typed out, signed it, put it in the mail, the snail mail, not an email, telling me how much he loved my show reports. And I actually still have it. I still have that letter from him. It's from Stephen Sondheim. He's telling you, I love your show reports. So.
Wow. Any other pinch me moments?
Any other pinch me moments? It was pretty amazing when we did the concert version of the show in Gander, because not only were all the people, the real Bev was there, the real Nick and Diane were there, but the townspeople were there. Of course, the real Claude, the real Derm, the real Bonnie and Beulah, the real Janice. They were all there. The real Oz, and it was great to meet them. But just to see en masse how amazing this little town, this little small nothing town that you wouldn't even, you blink twice. There's a line in the show where Bev says she flew over it 1,000,000 times, and if you blink, you miss it. But the people there were so amazing. And we all had our come from away jackets on that our producers had given us, these sweatshirts, and so we all had them when we came in, and they were like, oh my God, you're on the show, you're on Come From Away, I saw it last night, or I'm going to see it tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon, and I was like, oh God, I'm just the stage manager, I'm not in it, and they're like, oh, you're so great, thank you for bringing the show to us, and we never get a show here, and because a national tour is never going to go through Gander, Newfoundland, it's too small of a community, but we had to go there, and it made no sense financially. Let's get everyone let's fly them all to Newfoundland, and it was really hard to get there because we had so many people. So we had like a 6 a.m. flight from LaGuardia to Toronto, and then we flew from Toronto to St. John's. Then we took this ridiculously long bus trip to Gander. We were all exhausted, and we got there, and at our hotel, the mayor was there, and all the people in the show were there, and they greeted us. They had pizza. I was so tired. I'd been up since 5 a.m. and it's now 1 a.m. and they had pizza and beer and sandwiches and food, and then we stayed up for, we had a long weekend ahead of us, but we all stayed up for another 5 hours just talking and meeting, and I was like, I'm so happy to meet the real Mayor Claude, and I'm so happy to meet the real Bonnie and the real Beulah, and they all felt like, oh, this is my Uncle Oz because he gives me a big hug, and this is my Aunt Beulah because she gives me this big hug, and it's just amazing, and the show has been so much like that, and then we'll find, there's mention in the show of a scholarship that a woman at Ohio State put together. Who was one of the plain people, as they call them, and we've met some of the recipients of that scholarship. We've met widows of firefighters who died on 9/11, and they come and they thank us for telling this story. And if anyone is kind of deserved the right to be a little bit bitter, it would be someone in that situation, and they're not. They come and they thank us, and they cry and they laugh and they hug us, and we bring them on stage, they take pictures, they kiss the cod, and it's just so wonderful. I can't stop saying it. I'm sorry, I'm just this broken record of how wonderful it is to work on Come From Away, but it's so wonderful.
Were you screeched in?
I was screeched in. Thank you for asking. I forgot to tell you about that. I was screeched in. I drank screech, which was really horrible. I thought I was going to barf. It was really, really gross. I kissed a cod. That was like the easiest part. Was because I was like, oh God, it's going to be so gross. But I grew up in Minnesota, so I used to fish all the time. I don't know why I thought it was going to be so gross. Had the screech, there's a little bit more involved than what we do in our show. We had to also eat this kind of gross Vienna sausage thing, and we had to recite when he asked us if we were ready to become Newfoundlanders. We had to say, "Indeed I is, ye old cock, and long may your big jib draw," and which I can't believe I still remember that. I was really nervous about saying that because I was like, we didn't find out until like 5 minutes before that we had to do anything other than drink and kiss fish. I have a certificate that says I'm an honorary Newfoundlander. I don't know if it's legally binding, so if I don't think I'm a Canadian citizen, but I do have a certificate that says I was screeched in, and it's laminated in my office. It's up. I have a real Commander Gander. We met Commander Gander as well. I forgot to mention Commander Gander. It's another celebrity that we had to meet. So.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
Can you elaborate a bit on the softball league, the Broadway league?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I would love that. There's a softball league, Broadway show league, and almost all the shows have teams, and we go, and every Thursday in the spring and the winter, spring and the summer, we play softball. And there are 3 different leagues. There's games that start at 11:30, games that start at 1:30, games that start at 3:30. And Come From Away has a team. And we're a small show, so we usually team up with another show. Our first year, we teamed up with Miss Saigon, so we called ourselves Come From Saigon. Last year, we teamed up with Escape from Margaritaville, so we were Come From Margaritaville. And next year, we are, I don't know if I can really officially say this, but we're going to team up with Waitress. So we're going to be Come From a Waitress, which I love. I already have the logo in mind of what it's going to be, and we actually come from Margaritaville this past season. We made it all the way to the championship game, and we lost. I'm sorry to say we lost to Beautiful, but we entered the playoffs and no one gave us a chance, and we just caught fire, and it's been great. And I've been playing in the league for, over almost 15 years now, and it's every Thursday. It's one of my favorite things, and it's long. Usually you got to go to rehearsal after a game, and so it just makes your day that much longer. But it's glory. You're out in the sun. You're playing in Central Park. You'll see people that were with you on other teams before. It's a big brotherhood and a camaraderie. We also bowl. Tonight is actually bowling, and there's a Broadway bowling league, and I've also been associated with that forever. And we're called the New Pinlanders. Instead of Newfoundlanders, we're called the New Pinlanders. And our first season, we were in 5th place, and then our second season, we went down a little bit. We had some injuries. One of our top bowlers broke his hand, and so he was out for a big chunk of the season. And this season we've been in first place 2 different times, but tonight is the last night of the season, and if we bowl really well, we could walk away as a champion. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Actually, this is our logo. So this was my design, and I can't draw for. I was going to say, I didn't know for sure. I cannot draw at all. So I went to our marketing department and I said, this is what I want. I want a logo that says the New Pinlanders, and I want a bowling pin lighthouse, and a bowling ball. I want it to be our Earth. So and they came up with that. It was better than I ever even thought it would be. So, but yes, we're the New Pinlanders. So
who are you playing against?
We're going up against a team called the Banana Splits tonight, and they're not from a particular show. They're just a bunch of people who at one point were together on a show, and then they just still bowl together. It happened to me on Memphis. Memphis was a Broadway bowling league champion, and we played for probably 3 or 4 seasons after the show closed. We still played together. We were called Bowlers on Beale. And first date, I was with the first date. We won the championship in bowling. I have all these dumb bowling trophies, which are so ridiculous, and they're just sitting in my son's room. But yeah, so who knows? This time next week, we'll know if we are the champions of the bowling league, or if we got 2nd or 3rd place or whatever.
Had a good game.
Yeah, well, sure, thank you. Fingers crossed. So.
We have like 14 minutes left. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
I don't think so. If you got everything that you need, that's great.
Can we talk a bit about calling the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to talk about what it's like, or what are you looking for?
Can you describe like the calling desk and explain what exactly do you do when you're calling the show?
Sure. So basically, when you're calling the show, anything that moves, any light that changes, anything that happens physically on that stage, not the actors, anything that happens, I guess I should say technically on the stage, is because whoever is calling the show has said go, or they threw a cue light or something. So every time the light changes, that's a light cue, and so we'll say, electric's 48, go. Electric's 50, go. Electric's 52, go. And Come From Away has like 700 cues in 100 minutes, so we're saying go a lot. A lot of the show, it's all the cues are very, very musical. Our lighting designer is a gentleman called Howell Binkley, and I've done a lot of his shows in the past, and he is a genius lighting designer. That's no exaggeration, and he can find just the tiniest little moment in a show and just subtly change the lights, and the audience is going, oh, I get the mood. I understand it just that much more now, and it's so subtle. And if a lighting designer is doing his work, there could be 100 cues, but you don't notice any of them, except you always notice, like at the end of a musical number, it's like da 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 da, lights. Of course, you're going to notice that, or a blackout, you're going to notice that. But people that have come and have listened to the show being called, they've said, oh my God, I had no idea there were this many cues. And when I first started learning how to call it, I actually had to write in my script where I could get a drink of water, because you didn't want to like sit there and go, oh, got a drink of water, and then you made the cue, because there are a ton of cues, and there's no time to take a bathroom break in the show. So you have to watch your water intake. So go to the bathroom before. It's only 100 minutes, so just go to the bathroom before. Yeah, you stay at the desk. So we stand at a desk. We have our script. We have all the cues written out in it. We have a lot of cue lights. So we'll throw a cue light for a door to open, or a cue light for the turntable to move, or a cue light left or right for the actors to make their entrance, or for a sound for the sound. There's one time where we, at the top of the show, at the end of the show, where we throw a sound cue light for the sound department to start a click track, or just to let them know we're starting the show. It's a conductor cue light, and we also have all these different screens that we're looking at. We have a color shot, we have an infrared shot, so when it goes to black we can still see. We have an overhead shot, which helps us see the patterns and whatnot, so we can really see, like if a chair is out of a line, it's a lot easier to see it from an overhead shot. And we also have a conductor shot. So the conductor, there's a little tiny camera on the conductor, and whenever he or she is conducting the show and playing, they do all their upbeats and all their cutoffs right to that little camera. So we can see them. The cast can see them because we have monitors that are on our balcony rail, and the band is all. It's not like a normal show where the orchestra or the band would all be in a pit. Our band is scattered throughout the stage, and some of them our drummer sits in a hut that's off stage right. The conductor is stage right. Behind the conductor is our bass player, and just over to the side of the conductor is our percussionist, our bodhrán player. Then clear across on the other side of the stage we have a fiddle, a mandolin, a guitar, and a whistle, a flute. And they can't see the conductor, so they all have these little monitors that are on their music stand, so they can see when he or she is doing a cutoff or an upbeat or whatnot. And but it's all done with that tiny little camera. It's on one of the trees. It's on the piano, and. So that's the other shot that we have. So there's all these TV screens that we have at the desk, and yeah, that's calling the show.
what's it like to work with automation like this turntable?
This show's actually really simple with as far as automation goes. It's just the turntable. I've been on shows where we have pieces flying in that are manually pulled in on a rope, and there's also a fly automation where the pieces are so heavy that automation has that a human can't do it. So it's literally it's a chain motor that's bringing things in and flying things out. We've had big set pieces moving on for example on the producers. I did the producers. We had Max's office with 2 gigantic pieces that would come off from stage left and stage right and then come together. And then once it would go off stage, if it wasn't being used, they would pull the knife and they would get that out, and then get the next big set in and put that in. So the carpenters were working their butts off the whole show. And we had things come. We also had a theater on producers that would. The 2 pieces, one left, one right. And the door would actually fly in, and that door was so heavy that 3 guys on it would not be able to move it. So that would fly in. When I was talking earlier about fly automation, that would fly in. It was an automated piece. We had all the springtime for Hitler stuff. We had different things that would come in on these different tracks and whatnot, and it was really involved. We were throwing cue lights as often as we were saying go for light cues. Come From Away is a lot easier than that as far as scenery moving is concerned, but I think I have more cues in 100 minutes in Come From Away, lighting cues, than I've ever had in a full-length show. Because you're just constantly, I can't remember, you observed the show being called, right?
I shadowed Arturo once.
Yeah, so you know exactly, it was like, 48, go, 50, go, 52, go, 54, go. So, and we're just constantly saying go. My sister, she's a civilian, she has a normal human job. I don't even know what she does. I love you. But she listened to me call a Christmas Carol. I used to do a Christmas Carol at Madison Square Garden every year. And that was a 90-minute show, no intermission, and it was packed. It was tons and tons of moving scenery, moving lights, automation, fly automation, rail cues, sound cues, you name it, we had it. We had a horse. And my sister, she saw the show in the afternoon, and then she listened to me calling it at night from the balcony rail. And she came back and she was just gobsmacked. She's just like, oh my God, you never stopped talking. I was like, yeah, that's what calling a show is. You know, there are some times when you're on that play where nothing moves and whatnot, and I did a play not that long ago where literally I could have the baseball game on in the booth, and I was to have it on, and I was like, oh yeah, let me check. And my light board operator was next to me in the booth. We sat in the back of the house, and she was a big baseball fan, so we put the little iPad right between us, and then so we would watch the game. We never missed a cue, but we would watch the game. So because we would have just so much time. We'd like we'd say, electric's 48, go. All right, what are we going to do for the next 5 minutes? Because we don't have another cue till the end of the scene, and then so we would go.
Well, I guess that's it.
Is that it?
Thank you so much.